Today, we're going to look at religious shrines and icons in West and Central Africa. We've already talked about some of these in different contexts, but now I want to specifically address the way in which a shrine is used and the context in which a shrine appears. To begin with, some of the shrines we've already talked about. You'll remember from the Yoruba, there was a shrine of the equestrian figure with the blue detergent soap on it, crowns, indicating this idea of Ashe. And the equestrian shrine figure from the mid-20th century is a Oya, the wife of Shango, the god of thunder and lightning. The central figure is the priestess of Oya, is mounted on horseback and holds a royal fan and a rooster for sacrifice. On her forehead is the inverted double Celt staff of Shango. You see that sort of split ground is the important thing that identifies her as the wife of Shango. These are shrines that offerings would be made directly to, and in the other case of the Kota reliquary figure, we talked about shrines specifically to ancestors, and would be a part of a package below the reliquary figure that would contain relics, bones, artifacts from the ancestor. So this is sort of a guardian figure protecting it. But also it becomes a place where you can connect with and identify a ancestor and be able to have a ongoing relationship with them through the intermediary of these shrines. We've also mentioned the Asante and their kente-wrapped shrines, the Atano Shrine, or Kudo Shrine. Here on the right, you can see the actual brass container that lies underneath what's wrapped in the kente cloth. Inside this large brass container would be all kinds of magical objects and special sort of ingredients that the priest of the shrine would have compiled in order to activate it and let it be a conduit with the river god. And this becomes a very important part of this way in which the deity is sort of invested in inhabiting this shrine. Another important shrine in the Yoruba, you can see here this photograph from 1910. You can see this wood structure with these carved pillars supporting an area that would be filled with offerings, and this is an opportunity for a kind of a priest sort of to maintain this, receive the offerings and help with the prayers. And this is a much more formal and structure for religious activity. In many cases, a lot of the religious activity that might happen around a shrine might be a personal shrine, and there are lots of evidence of personal shrines in West Africa, especially among the Igbo. They have these Ikenga shrines, or place of personal strength. The Akanga Shrine is a shrine that somebody would have that would be made for them as a kind of marker of their status and as a kind of place where they can make offerings and prayers to maintain and enhance their status. It is there to not only their personal strength, but their sort of personal god, Chi, and the Ndichi, the ancestors, and Ike, power. All these things are sort of represented through this figure and that is present in the shrine. It is a shrine that is dedicated to the right hand of the owner. The right hand is the place of sort of activity and action and getting things done. Ikenga, the word means a place of strength, and it has a very self-conscious arrangement of the elements that are used to satisfy the values of the community and its relationship to the deity. So there's a kind of deliberate marking of this image of strength and fortitude, a kind of calm power. Many of these figures are often seated, or they're, in a sense that they are enshrined here and present and ready for action, able to take action in their kind of vital way. So there are a number of different styles of Ikenga figures. Some of them are fully formed humans, like you see there. Some are much smaller. Some of the common features of the Ikenga is that you see here these giant horns that come off the top of the head. And very often in the figures, there'll be something in their hands, tools, or other objects of symbols of authority, like staffs and other important features of authority. Here you see on the left a very simple Akanga Shrine, one that has rudimentary feet, a sort of cylindrical banded area in the middle, and a kind of horn-like shapes on the top. This would have been someone a man of modest means. And then, of course, the one on the right, you see this full figure, quite large, incredibly impressive carving with intricately engaged in elaborate forms. This is someone who would be a very high-status individual who could afford a statue like this. The Igbo also have another very interesting shrine tradition, and the Igbo, in this case, is called the Mbari. This is a fairly rare shrine. It's made not in a permanent way. It's made in a kind of elaborate process. And so it's done in a certain time when a village might feel threatened or in a kind of chaos. The Mbari shrine is supposed to be a picture of order and a sense of the whole world and everything in it in a kind of new, fresh, powerful way. And so the Mbari shrine is created, and then it is allowed, it is never repaired, and it is never maintained. It is allowed the jungle to kind of retake it in. And so there's this enormous preparation, prayers, offerings throughout the process of the making. The jungle area is cleared, and then people come and celebrate the opening of the Mbari. And then over time, we see it slowly return. This photograph here is an Mbari shrine from the 1920s, I believe, thereabouts. And you can see it has these special mud walls inlaid with beautiful plates. Now, the Mbari is essentially a box with 4 columns to support a roof. The box is actually supported structurally by buttressing all along the back. The house is open except for the core. The Mbari is perhaps analogous to an outdoor monument. A series of open spaces around which the visitor of the Mbari walks about create a succession of rooms which block in the center, which cannot be entered. Still, the Mbari shrines shares characteristics of a shrine and domestic house in terms of its architectures. And when you look at the different elements in this is sort of the plan view of this a very elaborate Mbari shrine that was made in the 1970s. The quote here is quite interesting. You will come to understand that they put 4 things into Mbari. Very fearful things, things that are forbidden, things that are very good and beautiful, and things that make people laugh. So this idea that it's supposed to arouse and excite us and engage us and give us a sense of wonder and fun, all these things are meant to kind of revitalize and reinfuse the spirit of the people with a kind of promise and a hope for the future. And in that kind of revitalize the community is through these activities. You can see here in the central area, there is this sort of small room right behind the main shrine. And that is where a lot of the offerings are made to the deities. And all around these cavities in these rooms, you see deities that are being worshipped from ancient deities, as well as modern images and ideas of modernity. You notice that there are these dotted lines that cross over around the back and front, sort of blocking and surrounding our central shrine. And it says here, telephone wires. And so clearly in 1970, telephones had just arrived into Africa. And so this is part of this idea of this modernity and that they're trying to evoke. They're not actual telephone wires. They're there to create the idea of telephone wires. It's a part of this way in which the Mbari Shrine tries to create a sense of fun and wonder about the world they live in. So the Mbari are built for a specific ritual occasion in response to danger and disaster, things like floods or plagues or wars or famines, these kinds of things that the community feels threatened. The Mbari is a chance for the community to build a sense of harmony and a sense of a place of stability. It's very ceremonially created, and as I said, it's never repaired or maintained. Here in this picture here, in the central shrine of the Ambari, you see it's usually these two seated figures, the male and female, and the thunder god Amadioha and his wife are painted clay sculptures. And so the thunder god here is wearing Western clothes with his pit helmet and his suit and tie and his shorts, whereas his wife is dressed in traditional Mbari fashion. So there's this really interesting combination here, this idea of modernity and progressive, forward embrace of Western tastes and ideas, and then at the same time sort of rooted in traditional values and traditional designs. That same contrast you can see in another Mbari shrine here, where you have not only the kind of modern family, the traditional mother, and you also have children now, a small child on her lap and two older children on either side. Mbari shrines are deliberately temporary, transitory, made in response to these sense of crisis, and is a sense of regeneration. The shrine itself may be correctly thought of a process than an absolute built form. It's meant to come into being, instill that sense of wonder and awe and excitement, kind of build people up in a very positive way. Again, you can see here in this decorated background that there are inlaid ceramic plates and give this a sense of wealth and prosperity at the same time as a kind of rooted in traditional family values. Here is another Mbari shrine. This time only the female figure here is seated in front, and we have other female figures on either side.